Today we're going to talk about little dogs and how to keep and prevent them from getting to a point where they're not eating. So it's really more about proactive watching the dogs, making sure that they are eating, and you guys are the first line of defense when it comes to making sure that all of our puppies are getting the proper nutrition. Now, we do feed Life's Abundance, which is a premium dog food. No fillers, no byproducts, no corn, no gluten, no soy, never been recalled. Vet grade food. It's a wonderful food. I feed it to all of my animals. You should too. The reason we like Life's Abundance is because it actually has a great formula. Every ingredient has a purpose. But also, even for little dogs, the kibble is actually flat, right? So it's very easy for their little teeth to break. Even my 3-pound Yorkie eats the dry Life's Abundance kibble. And we know that even our tiny puppies here that you guys see can take this kibble, crunch it very easily, break it with their tiny little teeth, as you can see as I'm doing in my fingers right here. But if you give them the dry food and they aren't eating right away, or you've noticed that they're not eating their recommended dose, which each of your puppies have a feeding chart in your store. All the puppies should be on it. And on that feeding chart, you should be keeping track of how much they're eating, how often, and if you had to doctor the food or add anything to it to make sure that they eat. So here's where we start. We start with dry food. You're going to give them a 1/4 cup for all your small dogs, 1/2 cup for your medium size, and 3/4 of a cup for any large, extra large breeds. Okay? So you're going to offer it dry. And when you offer it dry, hopefully they should eat it right away. If they don't eat it within 10 minutes, 15 minutes or so, for pet care, that's by the time you come back to start cleaning, they haven't eaten it, then you're going to go ahead and add hot tap water. When you add the hot tap water, it's going to look like this. You're going to soak it. It's going to have enough water to where all the food is covered. Let it soak for about 4 or 5 minutes, and then what you're going to do is drain all the excess water off, leaving just the kibble, like so. As you see, your kibble is going to look very different. This is dry, this is wet. This soaked kibble, what it's going to do is it's going to entice the puppy to eat, because now it's a little bit softer, it's warmed up, so it's going to smell a little bit stronger, and most of the time they're going to go right for this wet food. So if they don't eat the dry right away, then you go ahead and wet it down. You'll notice I have it actually shown here in a plate. The reason is because a lot of times small breeds, for some reason, like to eat on a flat surface. So we have these plates in the store so that when you put the food in there, you can put it down on a plate, and then the puppy will have it easier access to it. Try and keep an eye on how much you put down. If need be, if it's a very small dog and they're not eating very much at all, you're going to want to make sure and count the kibble that you put down. That way you know exactly how much the puppy is eating, and you can keep better track of it on your feeding chart. All right? So if you offer this wet food and that doesn't work, we're going to go down the line, and I'm going to show you the steps to make sure that that dog eats before the end of that meal period. Every dog should be eating at least twice a day, and your small dog should be eating 3 to 4 times a day. So if they don't eat the wet kibble, you've offered the kibble, they show no interest in it, 10, 15 minutes goes by and they haven't eaten, then you're going to go ahead and add some sort of wet food. And in the stores, you have a couple of different choices. You've got either these little packets here, your pedigree packets. These are pouch foods. And when you use these especially, mush them up real good before you use them, because it does kind of congeal and sit. So you want to mix it up. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and open it. And you're only going to add a small amount of that. So you're literally just adding maybe a 1/2 teaspoon to a tablespoon, depending on the size of the dog. And then when you mix this up, what's going to happen is all of this food is going to go into the flavors of the other food, hopefully covering all of it. And they're going to first, of course, eat the wet food, and then hopefully it'll entice them to eat the kibble as well. That's now covered in the wet food. So go ahead and offer this back to the puppy. So this is step 1 is dry. Step 2 is wet down with hot water. And step 3 would be to mix wet food and the wet kibble that you've already shown them. After that, if the puppy still isn't interested in eating this wet food mixed with the dry kibble, then you can go straight to either a different wet food or just a wet food by itself. If you open this up, you can offer them this food straight. Oh, sorry, it does drip, be careful. You can offer them this food straight, put it on a plate or leave it in the case that it came in. You can put it in a bowl, or if need be, put it on your fingers, put it on your hands. Sometimes they like to take it off of your finger instead of eating it out of a bowl or off of a plate. whatever it takes. Of course, we want the puppy to eat, and we want them to eat a good amount of food so they have energy, they're healthy. It's your job to make sure that they're getting that nutrition that they need. So we have all these steps here for you. Now, in a rare case that a puppy still doesn't want to eat, you've offered dry food, wet down food, wet food with soft food by itself. Then you move into a couple of other options. These are going to be in your store. They're actually baby hot dogs. And the reason, for whatever reason, dogs love these baby hot dogs. They hardly ever turn them down. So you can offer these, kind of mash them up a little bit, offer these straight by themselves. These aren't really something that mixes well with the dog food, but you can try it. But these are hardly ever turned down, so that's why we found that puppies really like these. And they do have a good amount of protein in them and some extra fat, so that to make sure that they get a little bit of nutrition in them. And hopefully the goal with these things is to kind of kickstart their appetite. So it's not that a puppy can live on just baby hot dogs. The goal is to get their appetite going so that you can then get them back to, hopefully, the dry kibble, because that's our goal. And remember, you cannot send a puppy home until they've been eating dry kibble for 3 days at least. Well, okay? So on the feeding chart, if they've had dry kibble only for 3 days, that's when they're able to go home, not before. Can't be sending a puppy home that somebody has to do all this work to make sure that their dog eats. It's your goal to get them ready to go home so that they have a good, smooth transition into going into their new home, okay? So you can try this. Now, when all else fails, if they won't eat anything on their own, then you're going to go into your soft foods, okay? These are your 2 options for soft foods. Again, every time you are in a situation where you're trying to get the puppy to eat, you always want to offer the food to the dog first before force feeding. And none of this stuff that I've shown you previously can be force fed, okay? This is all food that they have to eat on their own, that they have to actually chew and swallow. It has to be done by them. But if they're not willing to do any of that, and they still haven't eaten, then you move into these 2 options. And we have 2 options because you really do want to be able to get the dog to eat on his own. So I offer 2 options because you want one of them to be their force food and one of them to be hopefully a food that they will end up licking off of your finger. A lot of times puppy will not eat a food that you've been force feeding them because it's just in their mind, it kind of gives a bad vibe, whatever it may be. But this is the food that you're going to be force feeding. This is going to come straight from your vet, okay? So each of your vets will bring this with them. You should be asking them to bring them every week to make sure that you have enough to get you through the week in case you have a dog that's not eating. This can, when you open up this can, you're going to see that it's actually kind of a pate, which is similar to this food over here that we showed you, the Caesars, but it's a little softer. It's so soft, in fact, that you can actually pull it up with a syringe. I don't want you to be using a syringe to force feed, though, because the dangerous thing about a syringe is that if you squirt this right into the dog's mouth and it goes down into the wrong pipe, what can happen is the dog can aspirate and it can cause some serious problems in their lungs. So force feeding with a syringe can be very dangerous, and I don't advise you doing it. Instead, your fingers are going to get a little dirty, but it's okay. What's going to happen is you're going to take this puppy, you're going to offer the food to them off of your finger. If that doesn't work, then you're going to grab the puppy's mouth gently open. And I'm going to show you with a puppy real quick. I'm sure that we're going to have one that's going to love being our little star today. But you're going to open the dog's mouth, put it on the roof of the dog's mouth, and then the dog will then lick and swallow on its own. The reason being is that, like I said, if you're not careful and it goes down the wrong pipe, it can cause some serious damage to the puppy. Here's a puppy that we're looking at right here. This is a Cavalier puppy. And he's going to be very happy to be part of this demonstration. But he's willing to lick it, right? Because he's an active, healthy puppy who's eating well. But if he's not, you're going to open his mouth. You're going to take his mouth and pinch right at the corner gently. Open up his mouth and just rub it right on the roof of his mouth. See how easy that is? And he just licks it, and as he licks it, it goes down and he swallows it. And now he's willing to lick it on his own. And sometimes it only takes one time trying to force feed, and then they decide, oh, you know what, that tastes pretty good, I can eat that. And then they'll go ahead and hopefully lick it on their own. Now, if not, then that's how I would go ahead and tell you how to force feed. Now, when you're force feeding, what I usually suggest is giving about 2 tablespoons every 3 hours of this food. But if you have any questions, don't hesitate to call your vet. If your vet's not open, call me on my cell. We can talk more in depth about exactly how much the dog should be eating to make sure that they're going to be healthy, make sure that they're getting enough nutrition, and to make sure that they won't crash. Now let's talk about crashing. What is crashing, and how do I make sure that the puppy is healthy? How do I find out if I need to do any kind of fluids or give him anything extra? What you're going to look for, there's a couple of telltale signs when a puppy is not doing well. One of the things that you'll find is that a puppy should be always active and lively and responsive, like this. See that tail? He's very happy. He's a happy boy. And that's what you want. You want a puppy who responds. They should respond when you make noises. Hi. They should be happy to see you. They should be active when you set them on the floor. They should be running around. They should be a puppy, right? If you come in and you find a puppy or you notice a puppy that's not moving, not responsive, isn't acting quite himself, then you need to do a couple of things. First, you're going to want to check his gums, right? If you lift up his lip, you should be able to see their gums right on there, and they should be bright pink. Now, if you press on their gums, just gently press. When you release, it should go right back to that bright pink color. If you open the mouth and you see the gums are gray or white, that means that they have a low sugar. So if they have low sugar, thank you, you did very good. If they have low sugar, then you're going to want to get some sugar in them quickly and effectively. And here's a good way to do that. We have in the stores a couple of different products. One is NutriCal or Nutristat or Puppy Cow. Any of those are going to be the same thing. This is a paste. It comes in a formula that actually is kind of like toothpaste. And when you have a dog that is crashing, you can put a little bit on your finger, and hopefully they'll lick it. But if not, same thing as you do with the wet food. You open their mouth, pinch in the corners, rub it on the roof of their mouth, and then they'll proceed to lick it. That's going to get sugar quickly into their system, and that way, hopefully, you can get then food in their system. This is not anything, the NutriCal, Nutristat, Puppy Cow, all of those products, this is not something to sustain the dog. This is not a food. This is not a meal. This is just a sugar booster, okay? So this is a quick way to get sugar into their system. Another quick way, if you ran out of this, or you can tell your customers that most of them have this at home in their cupboard. Another way to get sugar in their system quickly is Karo syrup. It's going to do the same thing. It's going to boost their sugar quickly, and it's going to get them to where their sugar is brought back up, their energy will be brought back up, and then hopefully they'll get their appetite back. You can get food in them, and they'll be able to process it quickly. So Karo syrup, you can do the same thing, rub it on the roof of their mouth, or even just rub it on their gums. That'll get in quickly, and that way they're going to get that sugar quickly into their system. Now, another thing that you want to do if the puppy is really crashing, and what I mean by that is, unfortunately, there are sometimes with little tiny dogs that they get to the point where their system, if they haven't been eating enough, their system will start to crash to where everything kind of shuts down. It's a really dangerous spot for the puppy to be in. It's your job to make sure that they don't get to that position. But if they do, we do have preventative measures in the store to help you get out of that situation. So let me hand off this puppy real quick so I can show you that. This is called your subcutaneous fluids bag, okay? This should be hanging in your back room. If you don't see one of these in your back room, talk to your vet. Make sure you always have two on hand. There should be one ready to use and one waiting in case you need it. So you should always have two in the store. This will be hanging in a high spot so that the gravity flow works. What happens is this bag has in it electrolytes and fluids so that the dog can quickly get fluids into its system. So we're going to go over training on this a little bit later, but if you need training on this, we're going to have a video on that as well. Subcutaneous fluids are for dogs that are crashing to a point where they're not moving, they're not walking, they're not responsive, and if you can get the dog quickly to the vet, you want to do this before you take them in, or if the vet is not available, you call me directly, and then we can make sure that we get that puppy taken care of. But this is a quick way to get fluids into the system if there's an emergency situation. I think that we've kind of gone over everything. Like I said, we'll have some more in-depth training on fluid giving later. But this is the way that you are to take care of puppies, to make sure that they're eating. Like I said, your goal is to make sure that a puppy is eating well and on dry kibble for at least 3 days before going home. So The goal would be to get them away from this end of the table towards this end of the table. And it's your job to make sure that we get them back to that dry, hard kibble. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to call me. Ask your manager, ask me. You know, we've been doing this for years, so we know exactly how to get those little puppies to eat. It's one of my specialties. Thanks for listening, guys.